plan for peace only if Hamas agrees. This is Now You Know. I'm Rob Snow.
Going beyond the headlines.
Now You Know with Rob Snow on News Radio.
It's up to Hamas now. In an attempt to end the nearly 2-year war between Israel and Hamas, U.S. President Donald Trump hosted Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu at the White House, as Trump outlined what's being called a 20-point plan for peace. Under the plan, Hamas would have to release the hostages kidnapped during the October 7th attack on Israel. Hamas would have to lay down its arms and relinquish control of Gaza. In return, there would be more humanitarian aid for Palestinians and the promise of the reconstruction of Gaza. Trump says he has support from many countries in the Middle East for this plan and in other parts of the world.
I want to thank the leaders of many Arab and Muslim nations for their tremendous support in developing the proposal, along with many of our allies in Europe. Europe has been very much involved, and as I was called by many of the European leaders, most of them saying, "Is this true? Are you really doing peace in the Middle East? This is the most incredible thing we've heard." Some think it's the biggest thing they've ever heard. They called just to find out, was it just a rumor or is it actually done? And then they said, have you spoken to the Arab leaders? Have you spoken to all of the other leaders that we have to get? A lot of people involved in this one.
Under the Trump plan, all hostilities would end immediately. Within 72 hours, Hamas would release all hostages it still holds, living or dead. In return, Israel would free 250 Palestinians serving life sentences in its prisons and 1,700 people detained from Gaza since the war began. The plan calls for an Israeli troop withdrawal, but that would only take place after Hamas disarms and an international security force deploys to the region. Hamas would have no part in administering Gaza. Hamas members who pledge to live peacefully would be granted amnesty in welcoming countries. Humanitarian aid would be allowed to flow into Gaza in large amounts and would be run by neutral international bodies, including the United Nations and the Red Crescent. Here again, President Trump.
Under the plan, Arab and Muslim countries have committed, and in writing in many cases, but I actually would take their word for it. The people I mentioned, I'd take their word for it, to demilitarize Gaza, and that's quickly. Decommission the military capabilities of Hamas and all other terror organizations. Do that immediately. And we're relying on the countries that I named and others to deal with Hamas. And I'm hearing that Hamas wants to get this done too, and that's a good thing. And destroy all terror infrastructure, including the tunnels, weapons of production facilities. They have a lot of production facilities that we're destroying. They'll also help train local police forces in the areas that we're discussing right now, in particular in and around Gaza, working with the new transitional authority in Gaza. All parties will agree on a timeline for Israeli forces to withdraw.
The plan also specifies that Palestinians will not be expelled from Gaza and that there would be an international effort to rebuild the territory. For his part, Prime Minister Netanyahu has agreed to the plan, but he said there would be a security perimeter for the foreseeable future, and he warned Hamas there would be consequences if it rejects or undermines this plan.
I think we should understand that we're giving everybody a chance to have this done peacefully, something that will achieve all our war objectives without any further bloodshed. But if Hamas rejects your plan, Mr. President, or if they supposedly accept it and then basically do everything to counter it, then Israel will finish the job by itself. This can be done the easy way, or it can be done the hard way, but it will be done.
The governments of Egypt, Jordan, Indonesia, Pakistan, Turkey, Qatar, Saudi Arabia, and United Arab Emirates issued a joint statement all supporting this plan. It was shared with Hamas negotiators yesterday by officials from Qatar and Egypt. In Canada, Prime Minister Mark Carney said on social media the Trump plan is historic, and he urged all parties to help it realize its full potential. Speaking at the United Nations General Assembly, Foreign Minister Anita Anand didn't mention the Trump plan, but her remarks echoed similar comments that she said about the Canadian government's position before.
In the Middle East, the October 7th terrorist attack by Hamas on Israeli civilians was absolutely horrific. Hamas is a terrorist organization and an impediment to peace. Canada calls on Hamas to lay down its weapons and to release all remaining hostages immediately. The scope of the humanitarian crisis in Gaza is catastrophic and requires urgent action. Canada has committed over $340 million in humanitarian aid, and our Canadian armed forces have participated in airdrops. We call on Israel to help protect the civilian population in Gaza, to open land corridors for unimpeded access of humanitarian aid at scale, and to ensure that healthcare facilities are fully protected.
If there is one point in this 20-point peace plan revealed by President Trump yesterday that will face resistance in Israel's parliament, it could be the fact that it says the Palestinian Authority will eventually govern Gaza. At least one high-ranking member of Netanyahu's cabinet is speaking out against that idea, calling it a red line that can't be crossed. I'm Rob Snow. This is Now You Know. This is News Radio.
Critical thinking is not dead.
Now You Know with Rob Snow.
Returns on News Radio.
This is the National Day for Truth and Reconciliation. And it comes at a time when there are questions about Indigenous rights and the big push from the Carney government to build so-called nation-building projects. The Prime Minister Mark Carney held a series of meetings in Ottawa with Indigenous leaders this summer to try and calm some of those fears. We're going to explore that a little bit more today with Professor Alex Latta from Wilfrid Laurier University. Thanks for joining us, Professor.
Thank you very much, Rob. It's a pleasure to be here.
What are the big concerns being expressed by some Indigenous leaders about the push to build so-called nation-building projects?
Well, I think the idea of nation-building projects, of course, has a long history in Canada. Building the Canadian nation came at the expense of Indigenous land dispossession. And so, I mean, the treaties that were made initially had the objective for the English and the French settlers was to open up land so that they could develop them for their economic use, and that's continued throughout history, and we've seen a lack of consideration for Indigenous land rights, and so that kind of continues into the current day. So when Indigenous peoples hear about nation-building projects, it just sounds very familiar.
Okay. The Prime Minister has said no projects would be built without the buy-in or consent of Indigenous people. How likely is that?
Yeah, well, I think it is important to point out that Indigenous peoples are not they're not against development. I mean, many Indigenous nations are actively looking for opportunities to be involved in resource development on their lands, but they want that to be an equal partnership. And good partnerships depend on good relationships, and relationships take time to develop. And so, we're in a political moment where we're suddenly in a rush to pivot in terms of our economic strategy and to suddenly invest in a bunch of really big projects. And that means that our federal government and provincial governments and the industry partners want to move fast, and so that can if the relationships aren't already in place, that can be a real challenge. Now, in some of these projects, maybe those relations are already there, and I do know that some of the ones that have been in that first list of 5 projects, some of those have been in the works for a while. That said, there are concerns about some of them, like the LNG expansion in Kitimat, and a lot of Indigenous nations in northern British Columbia are really worried about the expansion of fracking. Their landscape is already dotted with fracking platforms, and it's concerns about the water, concerns about wildlife, just the overall impact. One fracking platform isn't a huge impact, but when you add them all up, the cumulative impact really hasn't ever been properly taken into account. So that kind of thing, it's frightening for nations to see these things moving so quickly.
What obligation does the federal government have to consult?
Yeah, so in Canada, within our Constitution, Section 32 sets out quite clearly the Indigenous rights and consultation. The requirements of consultation has become clearer through successive Supreme Court decisions, sort of interpreting the Constitution to say what does the honor of the Crown and what does good faith mean in the context of consultation. Canada does not have, at the international level, the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous People, which we, have formally adopted into legislation, talks about free, prior, and informed consent. And, the standard of consent really does suggest that there could be a possibility for someone to say no, for a nation to say no to a project if it's not really not in their interest and seen to be harming their traditional lands and traditional relationships. Within our constitutional process, the Constitution and the Supreme Court decisions have sort of set out a procedure that is consultation with good faith, but ultimately that opportunity to say no is not clearly defined for Indigenous nations. And so with that context, it's hard to be in a conversation between equals about potential resource development because one of the so-called partners has more power than the other.
Okay. I would like to ask you about something else because in your area of study, you also study water politics and policy. And this always comes up this time of year. I would like to ask you, what progress do you think has been made, say, in the last decade or so, on delivering clean drinking water for Indigenous communities?
Yeah, so I will say my expertise is more in the relation of water as a natural good and in relation to ecosystems, and so thinking about industrial projects and their impacts on surface waters and therefore on lakes and streams and aquatic ecosystems and Indigenous food systems. However, I do know a little bit about the issue of access to clean water in Indigenous communities, and there has been progress. There has been money invested. There have been serious efforts, but the obstacles have not been overcome, and those obstacles are really complex. And I think we're still a long way away from really resolving those.
Thank you for your time today, Professor. Greatly appreciated.
Yeah, thanks for the opportunity.
Bye-bye. Professor Alex Latta, Wilfrid Laurier University. I'm Rob Snow. This is News Radio.
Now you know with Rob Snow continues on News Radio.
If you're ever looking for a podcast of our show, Now You Know with Rob Snow, we have a great new mobile app that will help you hear the show when you want to. Listen live, listen to the podcast. It's called the Seeker app. That's Seeker spelled Seekr. And it has all kinds of exclusive audio that you won't hear anywhere else. News, music, and sports. And you can download Seeker for iOS or Android. That's Seeker, spelled Seekr. And now you know with Rob Snow is on Spotify and Apple Podcasts or wherever you get your podcasts. It will be one full week for fans of the Toronto Blue Jays without a baseball game for the home team. Between now and then, Jays fans will need to turn their attention to the American League wildcard round, specifically the bottom of the bracket, because the Jays clinch first place in the American League East. They have a bye right into the American League Divisional Series, and they await the winner of the wild card series between the Boston Red Sox and the New York Yankees. That series gets going tonight in New York. Best 2 out of 3. Yankees have the home field advantage. The Red Sox actually won the season series against the Yankees. The Yankees are seen as the better team offensively. Boston with the edge defensively, pitching probably a toss-up, with the Red Sox seen as having a deeper starting rotation while New York has the better bullpen. All the Yankees and Red Sox games are on Sportsnet. Game time tonight is 6:08 Eastern Time. The other American League wildcard series features the Detroit Tigers and the Cleveland Guardians. That's an afternoon game. Starts at about a half an hour from now in Detroit. Guardians on fire down the stretch. At one point in the season, they trailed the Tigers by 14 games. They overtook them in the final week, so that's why Detroit lost home field advantage to Cleveland by finishing second in the American League Central. Over on the National League side, 2 more games today. Padres and Cubs, 3 p.m. Eastern in Chicago. The late game, the Reds in L.A. to face the Dodgers. If it ends up being the Jays and Yankees in the ALDS, Jays fans might not be able to buy tickets for any of the games in New York. Canadian residents barred from buying tickets. Ticket sales restricted to residents of New York, New Jersey, Connecticut, and Pennsylvania. The Yankees Ball Club says it's meant to fight ticket scalping. The NFL season, meantime, has reached the 1/4 mark. The week 4 wrapped up last night, pair of Monday Night Football games. The early game featured a pair of 0-3 teams. The Dolphins managed to get their first victory of the season over the Jets, who moved now to 0-4. And the later game saw Denver make it look easy against Cincinnati, but the Bengals, who are without their starting quarterback, Joe Burrow, he's out with a case of turf toe. But final score there, 28-3. Both of those teams are now 2-2. Week 5 in the NFL kicks off Thursday. 49ers visit the Rams, both teams 3-1. And as for NHL hockey, the wait is almost over. The NHL regular season starts 1 week from today. We're back right after the news with our Newsday political panel. This is News Radio.
Now you know with Rob Snow continues on News Radio.
It's time for our Tuesday Newsday political panel. Tim Powers is back, chair of Summa Strategies, managing director, Abacus Data. How are you?
Oh, I'm all right, Rob. Always happy to be with you.
Well, that's great. Alex Chreston is here. He's vice president of Crestview Strategy. Hi, Alex.
How are you?
Very good, Alex. You in Toronto today?
In beautiful Richmond Hill.
Well, close enough. Richmond Hill.
Okay. Adjacent to the universe.
Well, I was just wondering. I mean, what's the buzz? What's the buzz? Are you seeing a lot of Jays flags, a lot of Jays jerseys? What's going on, Alex?
I see it everywhere.
Does the city have the Jays fever or what?
I think it's probably a week away from people really getting into it. But I tell you, where I was really excited to see the Jays fever was last week. I was in Victoria, BC, and there were tons of people wearing Jays gear there, and people on my flight back coming for the last few games, making a special trip to get out to a game. Love to see Canadians from across the country excited about the Jays, and the deeper they go, the more people are going to get into it.
Oh yeah, I'm excited. Hazel May from Sportsnet posted on X that Sunday game, the last regular season game of the season, with a chance to go to the ALDS. Audience 2.36 million. New record for a Jays regular season game on Sportsnet. Now, Tim Powers, I have to ask you, Tim Powers, just on the sports stuff. We'll get to politics shortly. You're the only guy I know who knows anything about rugby. I will admit, I know nothing about rugby.
Shame on you, Rob. Shame on you.
Are women now like a global powerhouse in rugby?
They have been for the last few years. That was the second time we were in the final, second time we won a silver medal, but this was an even stronger team. No disrespect to that 2014 team. But yeah, we have some of the best rugby playing athletes in the world who happen to be female. The World Player of the Year was a Canadian, Sophie de Goody. The reason, Rob, in large measure is because we have a really good competitive university system, and rugby is a varsity sport, and most of these athletes have gone through there. Many of them are playing professional, though not earning NHL wages. They're earning something and working overseas, which is fun for many of them.
But I was reading that they have to crowdfund to keep their program going, which doesn't seem right to me.
That's a little they crowdfunded to enhance the program. There was a $2.4 million base funding that has been there for a while. The crowdfunding was to allow them to get extra preparation, so extra camps, extra time together, so they could compete against England. But England has a budget of about 20 million Canadian dollars, so still five times what we have.
Okay. All right.
And thank you for raising it, Rob, because it was a great moment in sport for Canada, not just for rugby.
I had no idea. Let's get on to much more serious issues here. Prime Minister Harper issued an official apology for the tragedy of residential schools in 2008. He also created the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, again in 2008. Prime Minister Trudeau made reconciliation a cornerstone of his government during his time as prime minister. Alex, what is your opinion on the level of commitment shown so far from the Carney government on these issues?
I think with so many things with the Carney government so far, it really is TBC. We don't know. But that's because it still really feels like this is a government in transition. This is still a government coming into place and finding its feet. And, ultimately, yes, the Harper government laid the groundwork and built that foundation or that commission that really did uncover the sort of the depth of the residential school system. The Trudeau government, although thematically talked a lot about reconciliation, may not have really moved the ball that much when it came to impacting people's actual lives, focusing more on symbolism. But I think what the next job to be done here is how do we take what we've learned and then go and really impact the lives of Indigenous people for generations to come, to bring them up to the standard of living that we have in the rest of the country, and give them the hope that so many other Canadians have.
Yeah, such a great point. What's your opinion on the level of commitment shown so far from the Carney government on these issues, Tim?
Well, not to bore the audience, but I think I was going to say Alex, but that's Chris's brother, who I've dealt with before. Chris is on the right track there. I think it's still to be determined, though I would say this. There have been signs that there is still a significant respect of the Indigenous community and Indigenous involvement. Not obvious in the original rollout of Bill C-5, but that got the Carney government in some trouble, as you'll remember, Rob. But I think he's tried to correct that with the Indigenous Advisory Council that exists there now, and the fact that he did a number of meetings with national leaders. I don't think it's going to have the same passion for him as it did for Justin Trudeau. But equally, I don't think he's going to abandon a lot of the principal elements there. And frankly, for good public policy in Canada now, you got to be kind of certain that you pay attention to the rights and requirements of Canada's Indigenous people, or development's not going to happen. It's just good business to be respectful of Indigenous leadership.
I don't think you can politically just roll the clock back on any of this. Really?
No, you can't.
Alex, right? Alex, you don't think you can just roll the clock back on this now? Like, we're too far down this road now, right?
No, certainly not. This is something that the whole of society really has bought into, and so there's an expectation politically for any government to take some action on it. Here, once this is the toothpaste is out of the tube. And really, it does benefit everyone even when you think of the kind of to have Indigenous participation and equity in resource extraction and development. That's going to help everyone.
Okay, be right back. We'll talk about Canada Post, the politics of Canada Post. I'm Rob Snow. It's our Tuesday Newsday political panel on News Radio.
There is no question Rob won't get answered.
Now You Know with Rob Snow continues
on News Radio.
Back with Alex Chreston from Crestview Strategy, Tim Powers from Summa Strategies. Canada Post workers remain on strike. The Carney government is going to allow the corporation to make many changes, including ending home delivery of the mail. The last strike late last year lasted 32 days. It ended only a few days before Christmas. Given how far apart these two sides are, do you think the government would allow a strike to disrupt another holiday shopping season, Tim Powers? What do you think?
I don't think people found it that inconvenient, Rob. I mean, this is pretty historic when you think about it, and you and I are a little older than Alex. I mean, 10 years ago, 15 years ago, if you brought forward the changes the government's talking about now on Canada Post, there would have been riots in the street. Other than the CUPW workers and some people in communities that are worried about being impacted, this is a big, it's a big nothing for most people outside of it. So there's so many alternative delivery formats now. I'm pleasantly surprised, actually, because I think these changes are necessary, that there hasn't been the outcry. I think we're in a new place with Canada Post because of all the other options people have.
Well, I mean, if you go back to 2015, this is an issue that could cost you an election, because this is the plan that the Harper government was on. And let's face it, Mr. Trudeau and Mr. Butts, they made a big thing. If you're getting home delivery of the mail, we'll make sure you keep it. And that played well, I bet you, in a few ridings, Tim.
Yeah, I'm sure it did. And look, our neck of the woods, we know how important rural delivery is, and rural post offices in Cape Breton and Newfoundland and Labrador are key community gathering places and key jobs. But even in those communities, we're in the midst of an election. I know we're going to talk about it in Newfoundland and Labrador. Narrow whisper, Rob. A couple of parties have raised their hands saying, oh, we'll talk to Ottawa about it, but it isn't seemingly engaging people.
Very interesting. What do you think, Alex?
Yeah, I think if you were to look and compare this to the sort of the speed and haste that the government took in making sure that Air Canada workers went back to work when they were on strike, that was really disrupting people's lives. And, we'll see when the rubber meets the road when it comes to Christmas cards, the really important things. Although this time around, people will have lots of lead time and plans for alternative ways of getting their little family updates out on their annual Christmas card. I think that if I was the government, I would let this strike go on, because it'll only demonstrate how unnecessary daily mail is these days.
Oh, really? I wanted to just maybe game plan a back-to-work vote in the House. How would you see the Conservatives voting on something like that? They've tried to make all these inroads with labor, but I just wonder if the Canada Post workers are a different class of labor. What do you think, Tim?
I think Canada Post and to a certain degree PSAC are different than all the other unions that the Conservatives are looking to court and have been courting for the reasons we just talked about.
Okay. Alex, what do you think?
Yeah, I agree. This is not like the kind of private sector trade union kind of labor groups that have been moving to more right-wing parties across the English-speaking world. I think that the public sector unions in particular, and this one, I can't see this sort of causing a lot of consternation amongst the Conservatives, even though you look at who, I think if you were to look at who cares most about day-to-day mail, it's probably a lot of the older white voters who voted Liberal in the last election.
Okay. Look, when we come back, I want to talk a little bit about the politics of each of your regions, Alex being the Toronto guy and Tim being from Newfoundland and Labrador. Very interesting stuff happening with Toronto politics right now. A year out from a municipal election campaign, you have Toronto Mayor Olivia Chow once again trying to really stick it to the Liberals and put the pressure on the federal Liberals, threatening to raise property taxes by an additional 3%. Last time she threatened to do this, she managed to get a big fat check from the Liberals because there was going to be a surcharge, federal surcharge on everybody's property tax bill in Toronto, and she's threatening to do that again because of a funding shortfall on refugee supports. Meanwhile, as Tim mentioned, there's a provincial election campaign underway in Newfoundland and Labrador right now where the Liberals have been in power for 10 years. We'll ask him about that when we come back. Tuesday Newsday political panel on News Radio.
You have questions
Now You Know with Rob Snow has the answers.
on News Radio.
Talking politics today with Tim Powers and Alex Chreston. Let's talk about some Toronto stuff here. Toronto the broke. Mayor Olivia Chow is once again threatening to raise property taxes on Torontonians by an additional 3% on top of whatever the usual property tax increase might be, because she claims the federal government is shortchanging Toronto by more than $100 million for refugee supports. Now, the last time this happened, Mayor Chow threatened the Liberals with a huge federal surcharge of something like 6% on top of a big property tax increase. And what did the Liberals do? The Trudeau Liberals, they cut Toronto a big check. Now, this time around, the backdrop for some of this, there could be by-elections in Toronto. Freeland is probably going to step down, right? Bill Blair is going to leave. Have to be Liberal by-elections there, federal by-elections in Liberal-held ridings. What do you think Prime Minister Carney will do? Does he cut Toronto another big check? What do you think is going to happen here, Alex?
Yeah, you make a good point on the by-elections where Chrystia Freeland's seat is a pretty safe re-elect for the Liberals. Scarborough-Guildwood's seat from Chief Blair, if and when he exits, will be a bit of a battleground. Look, I think that Prime Minister Carney might not see this as his problem as much as the Trudeau government did. But ultimately, this is, something that all municipalities are having to deal with, but maybe Toronto more so than others, just because of the size of the city and that it becomes a magnet for folks from all over. When the federal government lets people into the country, ultimately it's local governments that need to provide the services. And if they leave the local governments holding the bag, it's a real hit on their coffers. Now, the municipal government has been spending a lot of money, and despite pretty significant tax increases, is probably looking to get money no matter where they can get it. And if they can blame it on somebody else, well, that's just how politics works.
Okay. All right. Let's talk about this election in Newfoundland and Labrador. Provincial election campaign underway. You have the Liberal Party's John Hogan, Premier, Progressive Conservative Tony Wakeham. Am I saying that right, Tim?
You got that right.
Yep.
You are.
And the NDP's Jim Dunn. The election is
Din.
October 14th.
Jim Din.
Sorry, Jim Din. Yes. October 14th. What's the buzz? How's this all going to turn out? What do you think?
Well, fun fact, Jim Din's brother, Paul Din, is a PC MHA in Newfoundland and Labrador, so we do like to keep it in the family.
Okay.
Here's the weirdest thing about this election, Rob. No polls, no public poll.
Wow.
So nobody knows really what's going on. We're halfway through the election, no public polls. There hasn't been a public poll since last November. The sense is it's, so be careful what Newfoundlanders tell you, including me. So I've heard all kinds of tall tales. So cutting through the tall tales, I would think it is still the Liberals to lose because there isn't a huge current of change, but the federal Conservatives did well in 3 federal ridings of the 7 in Newfoundland and Labrador last time. Tony Wakeham is more closely aligned with the federal Conservatives than any provincial leader has been in a long time. If he can pick up a majority of seats there, the Conservatives could pop a win out here.
Very, very interesting. Okay. Look, thank you so much. Lots of fun today. We'll speak soon.
Take care.
Yeah. Bye-bye. That's Alex Chreston, Vice President at Crestview Strategy in Toronto today. Tim Powers is Chair of Summa Strategies. And I'm Rob Snow, and Talkback is coming up right after the latest breaking news on News Radio.
It's time to talk back.
On Now You Know with Rob Snow.
Call now.
And have your say.
1-833-668-2577.
Welcome to Talkback. It's 2 hours of debate and discussion on the big issues of the day. Today's topic, truth and reconciliation and improving the quality of life for Indigenous people in Canada. I hope you'll take part in the discussion today. Here's the main question today. What do you think could be done to improve the quality of life for Indigenous people in Canada? What do you think could be done to improve the quality of life for Indigenous people in Canada? We're open to hearing any ideas. Let's just keep the conversation respectful at 1-833-668-2577. 1-833-668-2577. Not sure what kind of response we're going to get today. I guess we'll just have to wait and see. But while we wait for some calls, let's talk about a few things. It's been 17 years. 17 years since Prime Minister Stephen Harper rose in the House of Commons. It was June 11th of 2008. And Prime Minister Harper apologized on behalf of the Canadian government for the harms caused by the Indian residential school system. Let's listen.
In the 1870s, the federal government, partly in order to meet its obligations to educate Aboriginal children, began to play a role in the development and administration of these schools. 2 primary objectives of the residential school system were to remove and isolate children from the influence of their home, families, traditions, and cultures, and to assimilate them into the dominant culture. These objectives were based on the assumption that Aboriginal cultures and spiritual beliefs were inferior and unequal. Indeed, some sought, as was infamously said, to kill the Indian in the child. Today, we recognize that this policy of assimilation was wrong, has caused great harm, and has no place in our country.
"17 years ago. Shortly after that, the Harper government created the Truth and Reconciliation Commission. Its mandate was to document the experiences of survivors, to educate the public, and to promote healing and reconciliation. That also happened 17 years ago. That commission ran for 6 years. It traveled all across the country. It heard testimony from almost 7,000 survivors of residential schools. And it released its final report 10 years ago, a report that made 94 calls to action. 10 years later, Indigenous people in this country still deal day to day with a wide range of deeply systemic social issues. There is still discrimination. Discrimination is 4 times more prevalent for Indigenous people compared to other Canadians. All of these years later, Indigenous people are still overrepresented in the criminal justice system, both as offenders and as victims of crime. Indigenous people make up about 5% of the Canadian population, but are involved in 31% of custody admissions to correction facilities. Indigenous children are vastly overrepresented in the child welfare systems in this country, and Indigenous children continue to be overrepresented in foster care. A housing crisis is nothing new for Indigenous people. Indigenous households are much more likely to experience overcrowding, especially in remote communities, and a much higher proportion of Indigenous dwellings require major repairs. With healthcare, Indigenous people have much higher rates of chronic disease, such as diabetes, hypertension, arthritis. Access to even basic healthcare is limited, especially on reserves and in remote northern communities. In education, the high school graduation rate for non-Indigenous Canadians is about 83%, but it's less than 50% for Indigenous people who live on reserves. It is higher for those who live off reserves at about 71%. For post-secondary education, just under half of Indigenous people in this country have a post-secondary diploma or certificate, while it's closer to 70% for everyone else. And only about 12% have at least a bachelor's degree from university, while it's about 35% for everyone else. The unemployment rate among Indigenous people is 52% higher than the national average. For our incomes, Indigenous people earn about 80 cents for every dollar earned by non-Indigenous Canadians. 1 in 4 Indigenous children live in poverty. This is the state of things. This is the here and now, 17 years after Prime Minister Harper stood in the House of Commons and delivered that historic apology. But truth be told, these social inequities haven't changed much in 17 years. By almost every measure, from healthcare to education, from incarceration rates to child welfare to job opportunities and household incomes, many Indigenous people just don't have the same quality of life as the rest of us. There are no easy answers to any of these questions, but given the day, I think it's as good a time as any to just try and come up with a few ideas. That's what we hope to do today with your help. What do you think could be done to improve the quality of life for Indigenous people in Canada? The call-in line is 1-833-668-2577, 1-833-668-2577. If you've never called before, just mention that. We'll make your call a priority. I'm Rob Snow. This is Now You Know. This is Talkback on News Radio.
Have something on your mind you want everyone to know?
Call now.
Hello.
1-833-668-2577.
It's Talkback on Now You Know with Rob Snow.
Today's topic, Canada's Indigenous people. We're asking, what do you think could be done to improve the quality of life for Indigenous people in Canada? 1-833-668-2577. A couple of lines available there for you. We'd love to hear from you today. In Burlington, Sarah. Thanks for calling, Sarah.
Hi.
Hi, Sarah.
Hello? Hi. So I have 3 points, actually, that I think that I would like to point out. Is one thing is that, and a lot of people would not know this, there's a lot of Indian reserves in Canada that does not have clean drinking water. So I think that considering we are living in Canada, I think everybody should have clean drinking water. And there's quite a large amount of reserves that do not have clean drinking water. So number 1, I think that should be at the top of the list.
Okay. Very good one.
Number 2 is I grew up in Northern Ontario, and when I grew up in Northern Ontario, I recall the Indigenous kids coming in from school from Moosonee and whatnot, but they could only come in to get educated if they had a host to put them up into their home, because they would have to come from Moosonee, which is obviously far away from the nearest school because they don't have proper schools there for high school and whatnot, and they would have to stay at people's houses. So if there wasn't a house, then they basically could not get educated in our school systems. So I think that maybe we should have kind of like a campus that the kids could stay on, and they could go home on weekends. We could fly them home on weekends, bring them home back during the week. I think a school campus for high school would be a great idea for these children to be able to get educated, because I think that's a lot of the reason why they're not getting educated.
Okay, so have maybe in some communities, there's a community not far from me where a lot of Indigenous people come to the big English language public school in Quebec. I mean, from reserves that are hours and hours and hours away. And you're right, they have to find a place to live, right? What if there was a residence or something like that? Okay, yeah, I haven't thought of that. That's interesting. Yeah.
A residence would be a great idea, because some of them just can't come to our schools because of that, and they want to. They want to become doctors, lawyers, but they're unable to get educated. So that would help out in their education. And the other thing is a little bit more personal to me. So I'm 53 years old. 3 years ago, I found out that my grandmother is actually fully Indigenous, which I had no idea.
Oh, really?
The reason being I had no idea is because they were going around killing all the kids back then. My grandmother married my grandfather, who is French Canadian, so she hid that she was Native to all of her children because they would come and take her children away from her. So they were not known that they were Native. They went to Catholic school. She hid everything that they were Native. So I grew up my whole life not knowing that I am a quarter Native.
Isn't that interesting?
So,
okay.
So here I am now at 53 years old, just finding out that I am Native, but I really don't know anything about being Native or like going to a powwow
your history,
or anything like that.
Yeah.
So,
right.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I think that the government should do things, including for the people to be able to know a little bit of the Native, like do public powwows, like, and have a lot of them, and do little Native things in parks and stuff like that, so people can kind of get to know their background and who they are. People like me that don't even know anything of who I am.
All right. Yeah. Very good.
And
Very good. Okay. Thank you.
One more thing.
Oh, one more. Okay. One more. Okay.
One more. I think that the Canadian flag is white and red, but I think the middle part of the maple leaf, I think that we should make that part with some Indigenous art, like the maple leaf can be, but kind of like done a little bit Indigenous, so that we're showing that we're both, including the Indigenous people into our community.
Okay, I think that would be a tough sell, but I understand your point. People don't like it when we start messing around with the flag. Okay, thank you, Sarah. Good points, though. Interesting perspective. Sarah in Burlington, 1-833-668-2577. 3 lines available there as we talk today about Indigenous issues. Dallas in Cambridge. Hello, Dallas. Hi, Dallas.
Sir.
Yes, sir.
How are you?
Very good. What's your opinion, Dallas?
Indigenous. I'm wearing orange.
Good for you.
And
Okay.
I talked about it on Mike Farwell's show this morning on 570 Kitchener. You know what? We essentially took their land, took everything, treaties and all, but we essentially took it. And, I got some ties to Indigenous people as well. And I'm going to tell you something right now. I got no problem with standing up for those folks. Simply because every one of those folks that I met have been nothing but the best. And that's all I can say about that.
I guess what I want to get at is, I ran down this kind of laundry list of social inequities, from healthcare to education to criminal justice, child welfare, employment, incomes, all of these things. what I'm really trying to get at today is why do these persist and what can be done about them? That's what I want to get at today. Do you have any ideas there, Dallas?
Well, stop stigmatizing.
Okay.
There's always that. Right? Now, I don't know, because in my end of the country, which you were sitting in, somewhere around Ottawa, I believe, I'm sitting in Cambridge. Any one of them that I see, and I don't know if they're Indigenous or not, but at the end of the day, anyone that talks to me is nice people, seemingly.
Okay.
You know.
All right. Okay, Dallas.
As far as all the whether I don't know quite how to say it, but all I want to say is that we should be doing more.
Should be doing more.
100% more.
All right.
For those folks.
Fair enough. Thank you for your call. Canada's Indigenous people, what do you think can be done to improve their quality of life? Have your say on Talkback today on News Radio.
Have something on your mind you want everyone to know?
Call now.
Hello.
1-833-668-2577.
It's Talkback on Now You Know with Rob Snow.
What can be done to improve the quality of life for Indigenous people in Canada? To Peter in Waterloo. Hello, Peter.
Hello, thank you. I love your show, Rob, and thank you for
Peter.
the previous two callers. This past summer, I had the chance to do a canoe trip, a 5-day canoe trip with Six Nations on the Grand representatives called Two Row on the Grand. And it was a great activity to jointly canoe with Indigenous who organized this trip and get to know them as people. And it was not just about canoeing and camping. There were also cultural activities, ceremony, educational activities, and it was a great avenue to get to know the local Indigenous as people, not just as statistics. And the more that can be done to support initiatives like this to help Canadians get to know our fellow Indigenous Canadians as people rather than statistics, the stronger of a country we will build.
Such an excellent point. Who organized that? How did that come to be?
It's organized through Six Nations on the Grand, and I heard about it through a personal friend who's doing their master's thesis on sustainable tourism. And it's called Two Row on the Grand. So if you Google Two Row on the Grand, you'll probably find that information.
And what do you think you learned from that experience? Something you didn't know before.
I learned more about the realities of the Indigenous Canadians, and when it comes to the question of reconciliation, how both sides want to find a way to move forward together. The wrongs of the residential school crisis are absolutely terrible, but they cannot be undone. And we have to find a meaningful way to move forward together as collaborators. And when it comes to opportunities for Indigenous, they deserve to get more than just crumbs, more than just being monitors. You know, we should invest in education and training to help them gain technical skills, engineering skills, planning skills, so that they're being fully integrated into our economy, not just given token positions.
All right. Very good. Yeah. Really enjoyed your call, Peter. Well worth the wait today. Thank you so much. But we will have to stop here. I hope everybody who's on the line right now, you'll hang on the line. Your opinion is very important. And we'll be back 4 minutes, give or take. We want to bring you the latest breaking news right now. I'm Rob Snow. This is News Radio.
Have something on your mind you want everyone to know?
Call Call now.
Hello.
1-833-668-2577.
It's Talkback on Now You Know with Rob Snow.
Canada's Indigenous people. What do you think could be done to improve the quality of life for Indigenous people in Canada? 1-833-668-2577 to Pat in Kitchener. Hello, Pat.
Hey, how are you?
Hi, Pat. Very good, Pat.
Hi, can you hear? Good. I think it's really a very, very important question that you're asking. I think your last caller was certainly on to something with respect to governance being an important aspect of this. But I also think that there has to be a willingness to close the gap on some of these disparities from the Indigenous groups themselves. And what I mean by that is, you know, you compare families and groups of people that come to Canada from different cultures and different countries, and they come here with, 2-3 suitcases. They don't know the culture. They don't speak the language. And within one generation, their kids are engineers and doctors and, various different types of professionals. And so it's clear that Canada has the ingredients to increase the standard of living for just about anyone, but there has to be a willingness to pursue that increase. And so, again, a little bit more accountability with respect to the groups themselves, I think, will go a long way.
Okay, but don't you think perhaps this is where, the legacy of Indian residential schools may play a role in this?
I do think
the intergenerational trauma and the lingering effects and how that manifests itself in things like, for example, substance abuse and poor mental health, let alone the isolation of so many of these communities. It's one thing for, say, an immigrant to show up at Pearson International in Toronto and go to Toronto, and as you say, in a generation, their sons or daughters are engineers. I mean, it's, I suppose it's quite something else if you're living 600 miles north of Thunder Bay.
No, you're right.
Forever.
There is something to be said about the generational trauma, but then you can look at groups such as, the Jewish people who have endured countless historical traumas, and it appears that they haven't been as, let's say, set back as other groups. And so I think generational trauma has a role to play, but you have to kind of overcome that trauma. You have to have a willingness to overcome that trauma, and you have to have the right, I don't know how to term it because I don't want to seem impolite, but you have to have the right outlook on life and in life to put a certain emphasis on certain things where, for generations, let's say you do live 600 miles north of Thunder Bay, but you don't have to. Your kids don't have to. You can pack up and you can leave and you can go to Toronto and you can, have 2 or 3 jobs just like a lot of these other families have, and your kids can have a brighter future. So the ingredients are here. You just have to want to pursue them.
Okay. Thank you for your call, Pat, in Kitchener, in Turner Valley. Keith, Turner Valley, Alberta. Hi, Keith.
Hi, Rob.
Hi, Keith.
Thank you for receiving my call.
You're welcome.
I feel that there is a need for more input from our elected officials into the system. As we know, the taxpayer picks up the tab for all the costs of the operation within the country. We have an election coming up soon, and federally we have 343 members elected, provincially in excess of 1,000, and municipally probably even more. But we do not hear solutions coming forth. The problems exist, and we know about them. but we do not hear solutions coming forth from all the elected that are paid by the public purse. And I think it's important to open up our system so that there's a good return on the taxpayer's dollar that's being paid to all these people that are elected to do a job on behalf of the taxpayers. With respect to the Aboriginal and Indigenous communities, you read some information in earlier where there was a lack of different necessities in life, and they still haven't been addressed. And I think leadership and responsibility on behalf of the taxpayer by the elected representatives, there should be a greater voice coming out of all those elected people on issues that require attention. With respect to the Indigenous peoples, we know that as Canada has developed, we saw in the early days the Asian community rounded up and put aside while things were being investigated in the world. We saw the Ukrainian people receive the same attention, and the Indigenous people have been placed in a position where it's been very difficult for them, but there has been no leadership to provide solutions to some of their problems.
Better leadership, more accountability, maybe prioritize the situation a little bit more. That's what I'll take away from our conversation. We will have to end it there. However, thank you for your call. We'll be right back on Talkback on News Radio.
Have something on your mind you want everyone to know?
Call now.
Hello.
1-833-668-2577.
It's Talkback on Now You Know with Rob Snow.
Canada's Indigenous people, what can be done to improve their quality of life? 1-833-668-2577. To Mary is in Kitchener. Hi, Mary.
Hi. I haven't called for a while. Mary. I'm short and sweet, aren't I?
Yeah.
Anyway, I didn't agree with the guy that said, oh, well, they should come down to Toronto and work 2 and 3 jobs. Does he have any idea that the unemployment rate is going upwards of 14%? There are no jobs.
Okay.
Yeah, well,
I think his point was, I guess, a certain amount of accountability or what have you, right? Yeah.
No.
Okay.
He said work 2 and 3 jobs. I've got 2 grandchildren between the ages of 20 and 25, and they can barely get a job.
Okay.
So he's got his head in the sand. However, going on to the natives, one big disparity is, and I'm sorry, I'm going to divert a bit. I don't think people know how many Indian people, native people, are lawyers, everything. They're not just a bunch that don't go to school. However, the other big deal for me is that one guy referred to teach them hygiene. Well, why does he think we need to teach them hygiene? Does he think they don't know? But remember, Rob, they have had to boil water for 35 years.
Some communities, yes.
That's disgusting. In our world today,
there has been progress made on that. There has been some significant progress.
Not much.
Made on that. Well, I would say, I would say 10 years ago there were something like 150 long-term drinking water advisories. Now there are 37. So there has been some progress on that front.
Yeah, but it's still despicable. For all these years, come on, Rob. Come on. That's not fair. We're a rich country.
Well, you'll get no disagreement from me. You'll get no disagreement from me.
No, well,
on that front.
Trudeau came in in 2015 and did nothing about it. Absolutely nothing. Okay, Rob.
Well,
I'm on my
again, I
exercise
said,
bike and I'm out of steam.
okay, you're out of steam. Okay. Fine. Mr. Trudeau won the election in October of 2015. At that time, there were 147 long-term drinking water advisors. Okay. Now,
okay, you told me that.
now there are 37. 10
but
years later.
You know what, Rob? For 35 years, Rob, think about it. Just think about boiling your water for 35 years.
I can't even imagine it. Yeah, I can't even imagine it.
In a country like this, it's despicable.
Yeah, I know.
Okay.
And, they are going to build a water treatment plant in Grassy Narrows, although they more or less had to be shamed into doing it. I think everybody remembers when the protesters did show up at a fundraiser for the Liberal Party where Mr. Trudeau was speaking and were protesting about the contamination of the water at Grassy Narrows, and he said, thanks for coming to our fundraiser. That's it for hour number one. If you're on the line, please hang on the line. We'll get to you. Full hour just ahead. Talkback today. This is News Radio.
It's time to talk back.
On Now You Know with Rob Snow.
Call now.
And have your say.
1-833-668-2577.
We're talking today, and welcome to hour number two, by the way, of Talkback. I'm 1-833-668-2577. 4 lines available. The topic today, Canada's Indigenous people, and what you think could be done to improve the quality of life for Indigenous people in Canada. I don't pretend to have any answers. I'm hoping to hear any and all ideas. Yeah, I'll be right up front with you. I've kind of made it just a personal project of mine over the years to try and better understand these issues. I view it as an opportunity for personal growth, if you will. Really nothing more. When I was younger, I didn't really have a very good grasp of these issues. I have only slightly better grasp now. I just wasn't really raised in an environment that was very open to discussing these issues, quite frankly. We didn't learn too much about this stuff when I was growing up in school. In fact, I would describe the environment I was raised in the broader community sense as racist. Ugly racism. I would like to think we've made progress as a country on that front. Sometimes I wonder how much progress has been made, but I just think it's good to try and grow and learn and understand things a little bit better, to try and open our minds. Maybe it sounds kind of corny, so be it. I can only be me. So there you go. Take it for what it's worth. Hope to hear from you. 1-833-668-2577. Ikenake. Up first, hour number two of Talkback. Hi there.
Hello.
Yeah, hi there.
Hi.
Good to hear from you. Where are you calling from?
I'm calling from, actually, I'm heading to an event for Every Child Matters right now. I'm just going on the side of the road. But I happened to start at your radio station here, and I was kind of intrigued because it's sad that you guys are pointing at us as them. They, it's pretty it's pretty pathetic. First of all, I'm a First Nations member. I live in Siksika, the second largest land-wise reserve in Canada.
Okay.
And I'm a third-generation residential school survivor.
Okay.
And that's what today is, right?
That's what today is, yeah.
What I'm hearing on your radio station is quite racist from people, right? Understanding. You guys want to know how you can help us? Well, learn who we are. Understand where we come. And that's what you guys are not. All you guys are doing is just talking about how lazy, how we should go to school, how we should even clean ourselves. Oh my gosh, we're not 50th century. Come on.
Nobody has said the word lazy. Nobody has said the word lazy.
Oh, they said it in a different wording. In a different way of saying. So please don't.
Okay.
undermine me because I know I'm not, I may be a survivor and I've gone through a lot, but I've gone through a lot of healing too. So
that's good.
For me, my healing was going through my way of knowing. And what I do now is I help my people, especially the young people that are going through a lot, because they're lost. And what's happening is we're still in that group of we're lower than the immigrants that come to our country. We can't even get things in our we can't even apply for grants, provincial grants, even federal. We live on a reserve. We got a lot of things that we have a lot of disparity in our communities. First Nations
Absolutely.
in Canada.
I would never dispute that.
When you guys think that, how could you help us? Well, why don't you ask us how we can help you understand, instead of saying that, how can we help these Indian people, Native people? You don't even know how to say our name, who we are, right? You see, and that's what I mean. You guys need to learn to education.
Well, I've been trying to do that, sir. I personally have been trying to do that.
I'm not.
I can't say all other Canadians are trying to do that. I'm trying to do that personally.
Yeah,
I think that a lot of Canadians are trying to do that.
Well, the thing is, just outside the door here in this hick town called Strathmore, that's near my community, you have so much racism. So you know what? And that's not just there, in Calgary too, in everywhere. And we can't even go somewhere without being, mocked at or even followed. So, I think it's good that you're wanting to know, but you're telling the wrong people. You need to tell the First Nations people. And these are people that, even the survivors. Well, you know what? Today they're recognizing survivors. One day. What about all the other days? When they found 215 graves, it was only public for how long, and then next thing they don't put it on anymore because those Catholics are going to get all upset. Those Anglicans, and somebody talking about the Jews. The Jews only went through their situation not even that long. We've gone through it over hundreds years. So and I think that's where you talk about people that have gone through these situations. We are impacted personally, and the thing is, unless you guys
I'm not discounting that, sir. I'm not discounting that. What I'm trying to understand.
I'm going to start calling you ma'am if you keep calling me sir. You don't even ask. See, that's what I mean. You hear my name,
I apologize.
but you don't even ask. Who are you? What's your name? What does your name mean? Are you a woman or are you a man? That's what you guys
I apologize.
do. And it's typical, and it's pretty sad. Our people gone through so much, and we still are. Now our kids are going through that. We're on the line. We don't even, RCMPs, they have a test that our people is really challenged to pass. But if you came to our community and we asked a bunch of our history tests, do you think you guys would pass? No, because you guys don't know. And that's what I
highly doubt it. I agree with you.
Yeah,
I agree with
that's
you.
What you need to do is really.
I've been trying to put a concerted effort into today and an honest effort in today.
Yeah,
just try and get some ideas on how some of these gaps can be narrowed. That's all. It's an honest effort. There's no malice. There's no malice. There's no malice on my behalf. I have to go, however. Be right back. This is News Radio.
Have something on your mind you want everyone to know?
Call now.
Hello.
1-833-668-2577.
It's Talkback on Now You Know with Rob Snow.
Yes, it is Talkback hour number 2. We have been asking on this National Day for Truth and Reconciliation what you think could be done to improve the quality of life for Indigenous people in Canada. I will never understand the experiences of the previous caller. What I have been hoping to do with the best of intentions today is just try and look at the social problems, education, health outcomes, involvement in the criminal justice system, child welfare system, housing, incomes, all of these things, and try and figure out why these issues persist the way they do and what could be done, even the tiniest of steps to improve the situation and narrow some of these gaps. That's all I'm trying to do today. And I know that the previous caller took great offense to some of what was heard today, and maybe they have every right to. I will just let the listeners and even the management draw their own conclusions, and we'll see what happens as a result of this program today. 1-833-668-2577. Pam in Calgary is up next. Thank you, Pam, for calling and waiting.
Hi, Rob. I hope you can hear me well.
Yeah, I hear you just fine, Pam. Go ahead.
Hello?
Yeah, hi, Pam. I hear you just fine. You're on the air.
Okay, good. I have a confession. I am driving and I have my radio on. So, Rob, I have to say, I'm a little bit disappointed in what I've been hearing today. I was very grateful for the member of the First Nation to call in. And I know that there's a lot of frustration on both parts. I really believe that we have to do a better job about educating our Canadian people, both newcomers and long-time standing families here in Canada that are not First Nations. First of all, taxpayers do not make direct payment to a fund that goes back to the First Nations. It's very big misconception, and for people to say that their tax dollars go to First Nations is a big misconception, and I really would like everybody, including yourself, to become a little bit more familiar with what that funding structure looks like. I've worked with First Nations for many, many years, and I have to say they're some of the most beautiful, humorous, fun-loving people that I had the honor to work with and alongside. They host lunches where people that are on public works come to, people that are in workshops come to. It's really a community-minded place. Your caller that asked why they would want to stay on a reserve up north, I request that perhaps they go to a powwow in one of those communities to see the beauty of the world they live in, but also the community and the friendship and camaraderie and the traditions and culture that they all share. I really think that we need to do a better job on both sides about being curious about one another, getting to know each other better, and come more we than they and them and us.
Okay, Pam. Thank you. Thank you for your comments. Great comments all around. 1-833-668-2577. Joe is in Kitchener. Joe, up next. Hi, Joe.
Good afternoon, Rob.
Hi,
I just
Joe.
want to say you're doing a good job on a very difficult topic, and a lot of people are very emotional about what's happening with the Indigenous. Let me just say this, Rob. As Canadians, we should all remember the words in our national anthem, O Canada, our home and native land. And it was a native land in the beginning, you know. Rob, after the Second World War, a lot of the veterans in towns and cities and provinces in Canada, they were helped with wartime homes. We created little communities within communities for a lot of these well-deserved soldiers. And I think we really missed the boat. And whenever you get the politicians involved right from day one, nothing ever gets really done the proper way or fast enough. Like with that water situation that you were talking about with that one lady, there shouldn't be any Indigenous places where they still have water issues. I mean, they've had enough time. This is ridiculous. Again, I say the politicians aren't doing enough. The attitudes of some Canadians are not good towards Indigenous. And, you know, in a lot of cases, it's because they don't understand or they don't want to understand. I can't say exactly why that is happening, but we need to do more. And whenever you get these governments involved, it's just more talk and more talk. It's almost like nobody's even listening anymore. It's almost like they don't care. And I think, for instance, when you compare what's happening with the Indigenous overall throughout history is versus immigration of people from other countries. And we came over as immigrants from West Germany in 1963. And I can tell you honestly, there was lots of jobs around. We were welcomed with open arms, even in the Toronto area where Germans weren't that well liked because of what happened in the Second World War. But in short, to end this conversation, we have to really do more for the Indigenous people. And for God's sake, all you politicians, if anybody's listening on your show right now, no more garbage talk and no more we're going to do this, we're going to do that. Just do it. Don't say it. Just do it. That's all I have to say, Rob.
All right. Thank you. Be right back on Talkback on News Radio.
Have something on your mind you want everyone to know?
Call now.
Hello.
1-833-668-2577.
It's Talkback on Now You Know with Rob Snow.
Let's go to Herman. I believe Herman's been waiting a while here in Calgary. Hello, Herman.
Hey, how you doing, Rob?
Very good, Herman. Thank you for your call.
Hey, Rob. I don't know what the answer is, that's for sure. But I lived in back east for 26 years, and then I moved out to Alberta, and I've lived the rest of my half-life here. I'm 54. And I just wanted to mention something. Growing up back home, I never really noticed, racism towards First Nations people and stuff. We lived with them, played hockey with them, went to school with them. Now, I even know a couple of friends back home that are actually white guys that have businesses on the Kanawaki Reserve. So, I was a little naive. I always thought, isn't this problem solved? But when I moved out here to Alberta, it's a different world and a different relationships with natives. The police are racist against them. The police are racist against them here and Saskatchewan. I've heard of nightmare stories. I mean, there was one on the news. I don't know if it made it back east, but RCMP taking an Indian gentleman to city limits, taking his shoes off, making him walk in the snow. This was, and when I first heard it, I was like, oh my God, that must be a one-off. And then from what I heard from other Native people, I guess it happens a lot. And I was just heartbroken to see all that. I really thought we were really past a lot of this till I moved out west. So that gentleman that I called you before from Strathmore, I can totally feel where he's coming from. And I just wanted to sympathize. I mean, what you're doing is amazing. And to take on this topic, you are a brave man. So thank you very much. But I just wanted to sympathize with him a little bit, just to say, because he was a little bit.
But you experienced a different culture. You experienced a different culture, right? You were in a community where there was close in Ganawagi, right? In Ganawagi, where there was.
Yeah, I lived in Villa South. So it's just across the bridge.
That's not far. Remind me, that's not far from Montreal, is that right?
Yeah, it's right on the island. Villa South is across the bridge.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. So you had experiences and were exposed, right, to people of on First Nations and on reserves, whatever. See, I never was. There was, my gosh, it was just like there was just no coexistence at all. That was my own experience, and I mean, I experienced even like racism against First Nations, like in the school system, like things that teachers would say, things that principals would say. I think back to those times in the 70s and 80s, and you would never hear a teacher speak like that now.
Here's the music. I don't mean to cut you off. You are part of the solution.
All right. Well, we're just trying to, we're trying our best here. If people get angry, it's because passions run high on a day like this. I can understand that. And I don't have the same lived experience. It's Talkback. I'm Rob Snow. This is News Radio. We have been asking today, what do you think could be done to improve the quality of life for Indigenous people in Canada? 1-833-668-2577. To Don in High River. Don is up next on Talkback. Hello, Don.
Hello there. How you doing?
Very good, Don. Thank you. What's your opinion?
Good. Yeah, well, I just wanted to tell you that they talk about this Truth and Conciliation Day. Maybe somebody ought to tell the truth first. All the Indians in Saskatchewan and Alberta came here after the Battle of the Bighorn, and they slaughtered the Indigenous Indians that we had. And a lot of settlers, until they got them settled down, they're all imports. They are not Indigenous here. And
okay, I don't know about that.
This is every goddamn history book you look in will tell you they run with their tail between their legs after killing Custer, and they came up here. The only Indians that escaped was some of the Flatheads.
Okay, Indians. They're not from India. I'm going to move along. Thank you, Don. Thank you for your call. Not from India. You would think we would advance a little bit. Peter in Waterloo. Peter. Hello,
hey,
Peter.
Rob.
Hi, Peter.
Can you hear me?
Hear you just
hear
fine,
me?
Peter. Go ahead. Yeah, hear you just fine.
Right
Go
on.
ahead.
So I've just been driving from Hamilton back to Waterloo, and like 2/3 of the callers at least have just had racial undertones, like unbelievable. And the fact that you had one caller and that caller was Indigenous, is the only one to recognize it, is half the problem in this country.
Okay.
Like, it's I'm listening to it, and I can't. That's why I'm calling in. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Like, teach them to do this and teach them to do that, and mentor this and mentor that, and get the government involved. These are all the problems the Indigenous people have been facing.
Okay.
And I mean, I think the intentions of your show and your question are good. I just think they're showing the real problem in our country.
Maybe.
Well,
maybe.
I think your Indigenous caller said it smack on the head. So that's all I got.
Okay. Well, what was it that registered with that particular caller that you think was so correct?
I think that, I mean, you're looking at the white
like a colonialism attitude. A colonialism attitude.
Yeah, like why are they still on reserves? Why are they specifically Why are they on reserves? Well, because they want, the Indigenous people want their way of life. They want to preserve their way of life, and that's their choice. Unfortunately, yeah, there's a lot of places that are far-reaching, and that makes it real difficult to give the same education as, say, somebody that comes here from a different country. The one example was, with one generation they become an engineer. Well,
sure,
it's not that easy, and to try to figure out that question, I'm not going to try and answer it. That's a loaded gun right there. I just think I applaud you for trying to learn, but I think that the people that are calling in here are showing their true colors.
Okay. All right.
It's
fair enough, sir.
But that's where we're still at.
All you can do is ask. Look, I made an honest effort to try and ask this question today, hoping that maybe we could advance on, the discussion a little bit. I understand if you're disappointed with how the conversation went. I understand that.
You're doing a great
Is he
job,
still
and
there?
I think you mean well. Can you hear me?
Yeah. It's with the best of intentions, is what I'm trying to say. It was with the best of intentions.
I think you do. I just think maybe the age group of people that call into these shows at this time of day might be showing their true colors. That's all. Maybe
Okay.
the wrong
All right.
group.
Fair enough. Okay, Don. Yeah, fair enough. But, your opinion is a counter opinion. Peter. Yeah, your opinion is a counter opinion. So thank you for calling today and offering it. I appreciate that. That's why we do Talkback. Not every discussion is, it's not like everybody's going to be agreeing on everything. Clearly, and some people will even take great offense to some things that they hear on, a call-in radio show, especially on a day like this when a lot of people are hurting, but a lot of people are thinking. It's a day that I used to think about these issues, and whether we are coming to grips with the legacy of the residential school disaster. I mean, it's been 17 years since I said when Prime Minister Harper stood in the House of Commons and delivered that historic apology and created the Truth and Reconciliation Commission. And I just wanted to, look at some of these systemic issues that persist 17 years after that. That was the whole intent of the show today. We'll go to Mike in Calgary, but we'll have to wait a few minutes. Be right back. This is News Radio.
Have something on your mind you want everyone to know?
Call now.
Hello.
1-833-668-2577.
It's Talkback on Now You Know with Rob Snow.
Up next is Mike in Calgary on Talkback. Hi, Mike. What's your opinion on the topic today,
Rob.
Mike?
Well, I just want to state that not all reses are the same. So the federal government needs to step up and help the reservations that are poorer than others with water and housing.
Okay.
I don't think the federal government is stepping up there.
Okay.
The next thing I want to ask you, Rob, is have you ever been to a powwow? Have you been to a sweat?
Yes, I have. I've been to the
so
powwow on the
good.
Kitigan-Zibi Reserve, which is in West Quebec, Algonquin Nation.
Perfect. So that should help you understand the culture a little more then, I'm always going to powwows and trying to make it to a sweat so I can understand the culture a little bit more.
I haven't done that. My wife has done that, however.
Oh, yeah, for sure. It's an interesting, uplifting experience, that's for sure. It almost feels like it's brought me back in time.
Yeah.
And one of your callers is right. Some of these Indigenous people that have come up, they have come up from the States, but they've settled here now and they're here to stay.
Okay.
So that's not going to change. I don't know what that caller's talking about. And the next thing is,
some of the language today, this is what, the Indigenous caller was so upset about today, is some of the language today is kind of dated, calling people Indians and calling people natives and stuff like that. I understand there's a generational divide in the country. And, sometimes I have a hard time remembering, what Indigenous is and First Nation and Innu and Inuit. It can get confusing for some people, and you try to do the best you can to try and keep it all in what it's supposed to be, what's appropriate.
Well, it's Aboriginal, it's Indigenous. I don't know if it's First Nations. First Nations makes it sound too entitled, and that's what some old Aboriginal people have told me. I also think some of the natives, they need to quit using the slang word Indian themselves to get some turnaround and some change. I have my adopted res family I hang out with, and they use that word all the time,
Oh, really?
But I think they need to quit. I think they need to quit using that word themselves and start using Aboriginal or Indigenous.
Okay.
And you had an Aboriginal caller today. The one thing I didn't agree with what he said is you can't compare what happened with the residential schools to what happened to the Jewish people either. That's not fair. It's not even the same subject.
Okay. All right. Thank you for your call, Mike. Thank you for sharing your opinion. To Waterloo today, Dennis is in Waterloo. Hi, Dennis.
Hi, how are you? I
Very
wanted
good.
to share
Dennis?
a perspective. I actually called in our local radio this morning with a similar comment, but it's a perspective I don't hear about it now. I don't pretend to be seriously knowledgeable about the whole truth and reconciliation. But anyway, my perspective is, I have two French Canadian grandmothers, and my ancestors came here, Europeans, to Quebec in the early 1600s on my dad's side. And on my mom's side, they went to Nova Scotia in the early 1600s. Now, some of these early Europeans were young men, and they came alone. They didn't come with women. So guess what happened? And in the case of my Nova Scotia side, there were formal marriages. My ancestor married a Micmac. And that's all been verified. I have an uncle who did genealogical research. He was a history master's and scholar, and it's all verified. I got the books verifying it. The point is, though, let's talk about the other part of the truth, though, and that is that, grade 10 math, we all have 4 grandparents, 16 great-grandparents, 64. So you go 4th to the 12th power, and that number is millions and millions, 12th, 13th power. There wasn't that many people back then. So the bottom line is, chances are, if you're a French Canadian, you probably have some indigenous blood in you, And if we go forward, especially since the 60s, when there was all the intermarriages, looking forward, I have my nephew is married to a Thai woman, and her 4 kids look like she does, and they have indigenous blood. The point is, and that's a matter of pride for every one of us in my family. And I think that's what, I don't have solutions, but, to me, reconciliation is about, I looked it up in the dictionary, it's a restoration of friendly relations. And I think we got to get together, all of us, people like me, and by the way, it's probably the majority of Canadians, we have the same, some similar, we're obviously not the same, but similar blood in us, and let's celebrate that together. And I think we have to, looking back in the past is celebrate the past and recognize our heritage, but we got to start looking forward. And my only suggestion looking forward is, I think we have to look at the Jewish people. There's no group that's been put under more abuse for a couple of millennium, in the Holocaust. And look at what that people have done. And, I think we need to learn from them. And from what I understand, I stand to be corrected on this, but our schools of social work don't study the Jews in the Holocaust. They don't even look at the success. And I think we've gotten trapped into this.
We can talk about that another day. I understand your linkage there. I want to stay focused. I don't want to wander too far off. But thank you for your call. I appreciate it. I really do. Be right back with more of your calls on Talkback today on News Radio.
Have something on your mind you want everyone to know?
Call now.
Hello.
1-833-668-2577.
It's Talkback on Now You Know with Rob Snow.
Let's go to Pete in Listowel as we wind down today's Talkback. Hi, Pete.
Hey, Rob. How are you?
Very good, Pete. What's your opinion here?
Well, my opinion is, and I'll try to keep it as short as I can here, but just as an example, we changed the Cleveland Indians to the Guardians. The Washington, now it's the Commanders. And I have a real problem, I guess, with the word reservation.
Why so?
Well, it's just the way it sounds. You make a reservation at a hotel, but, I hear people talking all the time, well, I go to the res for my gas, or I go to the res for my cigarettes, whatever. I take offense to that. My second point is this, Rob, and my question to you is, do they pay on the reservations, do they pay property tax?
Does who pay property tax?
The indigenous people that live on the reservation?
I don't believe so.
No. So I guess here's my thought.
But they're also not allowed to own they also don't own their homes.
Yes, right? I understand that. But why wouldn't we turn the reservations that they're called now into municipalities?
Okay. Well, so more self-government sort of thing. perhaps.
Yes, exactly. You know, and they have elections every 4 years, the same as we have in North Perth, where I live. You know, and give them a little bit more, give those people a little bit more responsibility on, you know, going forward.
Well, most bands have their own, but most bands have their own elections, right?
Yeah.
And when it, you know, and when it comes to, you know, say the ownership of housing, you know, this is one of the things some people have called for in the past. Why don't we reform this? Why don't we, you know, on reservations have some ability for people to buy and own homes, build equity in homes, and all the things that other Canadians have the opportunity to do.
Exactly. That's my point too. And you said it very well, Rob. And I agree wholeheartedly with you. I've got my orange shirt on today. So for the one caller that you had, you know, I don't recognize it. I have no heritage as an Indigenous person, but I honor the day by wearing an orange shirt. And those are mistakes that my forefathers made back in the 80s and 1800s, I should say. And I truly do recognize this day. So, and I think more Canadians have to. And that's my own opinion, Rob.
Okay. Well, it's well said. And that's all the time that we have for today's Talkback. I really appreciate most of the calls today. Honestly, hard topic, emotional topic, and one that it's just an ongoing conversation because so many of the issues are not new issues, decades, if not centuries old, and will not be solved through a 2-hour call-in radio show. And much more remains to be done. But I thank you, everyone who participated today. We'll be back to more brand new topic and more of your calls, and always the latest breaking news. I'm Rob Snow. This is News Radio.